The Auckland Mayor Phil Goff has set up a task force to combat the city's burgeoning housing shortage. The announcement comes just a day after strategist Leonie Freeman scrapped a proposal to set up a new entity to tackle the housing crisis after the council and government apparently showed no interest. I spoke with Phil Goff this afternoon and asked him what it would mean for Auckland.
What it's about is what you'd expect, actually, is a common sense approach to the obvious housing crisis that we have in Auckland. We need to deal with the shortage of supply and the unaffordability of housing. And what we're doing is simply pulling together a range of people, both public and private sector, so central and local government, builders, developers, banks, planners and so on, to really examine where the obstacles lie in converting the housing consents into actual houses built. We've dealt with the planning issues in terms of, under the unitary plan, we now have an ample supply of land that is zoned for housing. But what is standing in the way of getting those houses built and addressing the shortfall between the demand for housing and the supply of it?
And it includes central government. So have you been talking to Nick Smith about this?
Yeah, I've had a couple of meetings with Nick Smith. The last one, or probably just maybe about 10 days ago. And we were talking about what might replace the Auckland Housing Accord, which expires next year. It seems to me that whatever the positive factors of that housing accord might have been, the number of houses that were built in special housing areas has been about 1,700. That's helpful, but it's nowhere near enough to address the crisis that we have in Auckland. So we want to know what stands in the way of building more houses and quickly. And some of those answers will be obvious. It's the shortage of infrastructure to allow the houses to be built, the water and wastewater, the roads and so on, and the funding needed for that. It's about a skill shortage, given the pace at which the industry is going at the moment. It's about the rapid escalation in the price of building materials. It's about land banking. So we want to get together people that are on the front line of dealing with the need to supply more houses and work out where the market failures exist and work out a series of recommendations that we can make to the Minister that we think will make a difference.
And so what, will you be setting numbers and will you be setting dates? Will you be setting deadlines on this?
Oh, look, we want to do it as quickly as possible. So we'll either convene the task force just before Christmas or more likely early in the new year. And it's to deal with a practical set of recommendations that we want to make to the Minister that will address the problems that stop the building industry being able to provide the number of houses that the huge growth in Auckland currently demands.
The housing strategist Leonie Freeman, she's been involved in housing in all kinds of forms for a long, long time. I mean, she had this idea pulling together all of the parties. Have you had any discussion with her about this? Because she scrapped that plan earlier this week and said that the council and central government didn't seem to be interested in it, but yet it seems very similar to what you've pulled together here in the task force.
Well, I had a brief discussion with her on the fringes of a meeting on homelessness a couple of weeks ago, but she hadn't, to the best of my knowledge, asked to see me personally. Look, she'd put something together. It did involve the expenditure of $250,000. I'm reluctant to expend $250,000 if I think I can achieve the same thing less formally through bringing together the parties that I'm sure will be willing to cooperate to help us address this problem.
That wasn't $250,000 from the council, though. That was different parties contributing to $250,000.
I think the intention was that the council should contribute to that, and the intention. I mean, I think there are very good ideas in what Leonie put forward. I read her paper carefully, but in the end, government has to agree to provide the funding and the mechanisms to allow this to happen.
Mr Goff, have you had to rush this task force out? Because when you spoke to RNZ earlier this week or late last week, and you were asked about the whole area of housing, you didn't make any mention of it. Have you sort of pushed it forward?
Well, I did make mention to Todd Nile about what we were doing on homelessness, which was in the public arena. On this side of it, this is work that I've been doing over the last couple of weeks with the Deputy Mayor and the Chair of the Planning Committee. But you don't announce these things until you've made progress to the point that you're ready to announce them, and that's exactly what we're doing now.
And that's the Auckland Mayor Phil Goff.